Welcome to EIPIP Meeting 100. This is issue number 312 on ETCAT headers/EIPIP GitHub repository. Today on agenda, we have some discussion with respect to EIP process standardization, open issues in PR. We'll take a look into call for input and some other discussion continued from the earlier meeting, followed by EIPS Insight for the month of February. So starting with the very first item, which was suggested by Greg here, it is about adding errata section for final EIPs. We understand that this discussion came up multiple times in the EIPIP meeting, but because this was specifically requested to be discussed and make a decision in this meeting, so let me invite Greg to maybe provide some background why he wants that, and we can open the floor for editors to share their thoughts over here.
Yeah, I'm looking through the agenda item. It's probably not that important. It came up recently on a request from an author to add a co-author. There was some discussion of that so far as even what authorship meant. So there's some disagreement on that, but I think it's pretty clear industry-wide for publishing that a major contributor to any publication is considered an author. And certainly if a primary author is saying, this person is a co-author, then there shouldn't be any real doubt of that. And if that person was left off the list, that's an error that should be corrected somehow. And in general, for instance, for a final EIP, that's a core EIP, the EIP needs to describe what's actually running on the mainnet. And if it does not describe that, then it's an error that needs to be fixed. And for years, the intention has been that we can have errata, and we simply have never gotten around to deciding on just how we want to do that. So I wanted to just settle how we do that, so we can even have reasonable discussions of whether some requested change is an errata, because it just keeps coming up. And I think in the industry, it's done in one of two ways. Either the document itself is corrected and a footnote is added saying a previous version had such and such mistake, or the original document is left alone, and then there's some sort of footnote or separate something saying this is the correction. The ITF does it the latter way. So there's an original document. In the header, it will say there are errata, and then they maintain a separate list of all the errata, and actually have usually a link to a version in which shows the version with the merged errata. We can do it either way. The latter way, I think GitHub would support by creating a fork of that document that's been corrected. But it could be done either way. So I just like to open up a discussion on that one. And if we get any consensus on that, then there's the particular issue on the on the PR to add the missing author somehow.
So what would the errata section like bring over Git commit history?
Well, I guess the first decision is, do we allow for errata? I think that decision needs to be yes, but I don't know if we have consensus on that.
I think we do allow very limited errata right now, and we use Git commit history to track them. So I think, EIP1 does say that we're allowed to add clarifications and errata. So, yeah.
Okay, I'd suggest that only normative things need to be fixed. If it's not normative, then there's no compelling reason to change it. But anything normative that's wrong needs to be made right. And I guess authors are on the edge as to whether that's normative. But it's important. Even just a search with the duck or with Google, we'll find policies for journal after journal, indicating that you need to give credit where credit is due. I think in some cases it's almost a legal thing. Someone can actually sue that they were an author and they were not credited. So if we already have a procedure in which we simply correct the document and the JIT history shows that a correction was made, then I think maybe we need a field in the header pointing back to that commit, or what? Do we already have a process?
So I think the process, right?
Yeah, actually, the reason that you mentioned that somebody might sue is the reason that we should not be having the author list, because people can keep coming back and saying that, I contributed to this, but I was left out. And it is it will always be a bone of contention. So I think that we should change author to maintenance, and we should call it a day instead of opening this Pandora box of allowing the changes to a final EIP.
Well, wait a minute. The first question is, do we have a process? Do we have a way of making a change for an errata? How do we do that, and how do we indicate that that's been done?
Yeah, so right now we use the call for inputs for that. So if somebody wants to make a change to a final EIP, they or more likely I can make a call for input where we collect editor opinions and then decide if we're going to allow the modification or not.
And if we make the modification, how do we indicate that something was modified?
You just modify it, and then the changes are shown in the history.
Okay. Would it make sense to add a field to the header indicating that it had been modified and giving the commit?
So there is a proposal that the testing team brought up recently for EIP versioning, and I think that would be a reasonable way to Yeah, sorry, I think that would handle reasonably what you're suggesting. So you would indicate why you're changing the EIP, and then you'd also include like either a patch, minor, or major version number bump. Yeah, thank you, Pooja. And that would be in the header. So you would be able to tell what changed and when.
Okay. I'm on a phone now, so I can't easily read the chats. There's not much. In fact, I can't even see the screen outside where I am. It's too bright. Um, so if people are putting things in the chat, I can't see them.
I'll put it in Discord for later.
Okay. If that's already settled, then the issue is whether we can add an author later. And I strongly think that if the primary author is saying we missed an author and we need to give this person credit, I cannot see any reason why we would not make the change.
So I think this is where Gajinder's objection comes in, where if we have authorship as a field, and please jump in if I'm misrepresenting your opinions here, but if we have authorship as a field, then people can always come back and say, oh, this person was an author, this person was an author, even though they didn't contribute meaningfully to the document. And so he's suggesting we rename the field to maintainers and remove the implication that they have authorship credit.
Very often the authors are not maintainers. They were authors.
Right, exactly. So we should rename the field so it isn't authors anymore, and make it purely just people who have permission to merge pull requests. So Gajinder posted in chat. How can one miss an important author all this while the EIP went through to become final?
If you change that, often there are EIPs, core EIPs even, where the original author's no longer maintaining it at all.
Exactly. So I think the idea would be to not call them authors anymore.
So we go in and make a change and say, I forget who the authors of ERC20 are, but I think they've all moved on. And if not that one, I'm sure you can find a number of EIPs, even very important ones, for which the authors have moved on and have no further interest in maintaining the document.
Yep. So we have such EIPs where someone is trying to, for example, move them from stagnant to basically draft status, and we can't do that. We don't allow them to do that because the original author does not agree to that, and original author also doesn't want to maintain the EIP. So, I mean, we already have, this current behavior with regard to the EIPs that, if the final EIPs anyway don't need maintenance, so again, it doesn't matter whether the authors have moved on or not. And for the EIPs that have become stagnant, if the author is not willing to let somebody else take charge, and so they can't really do that. So in that case, a new IP has to be created. So we already have this process where we force people to float a new EIP if they want to work on an old EIP, and if the previous author is not available or previous author doesn't agree to that.
This gets strange. For instance, EIP 615, Christian is still an author. He contributed substantial text, which is still there. He actually opposed the EIP at this point, and I asked if he wanted to be removed as an author, and he did not. He wanted credit for the text that he contributed, even though he no longer wanted the EIP to be accepted by the core devs in the form that it's in now. And I don't think it's ever been withdrawn. It's simply in probably stagnant status. Yeah, regardless, that's just an example where if, for instance, EOF failed, I might very well decide to resurrect that one, and would see no reason necessarily to have to give it a new number just because one of the authors wasn't interested. It's a dicey situation, but legally it's much more appropriate to leave the authorship unless that author actually wants to be removed as the author.
Just to kind of restate this again, the idea would be that we no longer track authorship at all as part of the process, and we only track permission to merge pull requests. And that would be the change I think that Gajinder is proposing.
Only the editors have permission to actually merge.
So unless you're changing the status, authors can merge without editor approval.
And this all gets very confusing. Do we, if there winds up being conflicts between existing authors, then what?
I think what has been suggested so far, I'm just trying to take some excerpts from the discussion here. If there could be confusion between or like disagreement between two authors of a proposal, the best way to go forward would be to come up with either a new proposal or just to, remove the author. With obviously the author who is disagreeing can agree to be removed at that point, and we can move forward with the proposal. If I understand correctly, people are suggesting here is like we should not make edits to the proposal when it went into final status. However, that's not the case with proposal 615. That is still in stagnant. It can be brought back, it can be resurrected, and it can be updated with the authors list over there. But in case a proposal is finalized, we should not allow to update. However, another proposal that came up was versioning scheme that may allow to some of the non-errata things. And if people are open to consider that updating this author as non-errata, it could be a part of that. Do we want to go ahead with call for input here to collect points from other editors? What do they generally think about it? And we can perhaps make a decision in upcoming meeting.
And this seems to be an easy case. The primary author has said basically it was a mistake to leave this person off, and we want to add the person to.
So
get
the
the
decision on that particular EIP has been reached, and I don't think anything new has come up. So let's not reopen discussion on it.
Okay, the decision was incorrect, and I object strongly to the decision, and I would block the consensus if I could. It is completely unfair to the primary author and to the person the primary author wants to add.
Noted.
Can we do this? So Greg, I think we like should very cautiously use our power to block consensus. If we are like the minority opinion, I think it's okay that we kind of, just like how Supreme Court does, we can just publish a minority opinion, but still allow if we feel strong enough, but still allow the general editor group to follow the consensus of other people. Because anytime a blocking opinion, a blocking issue, anytime if any one of us raise an attempt to block consensus, it's kind of a damaging to not only our efficiency, but also like how we collaborate. So I like to say that I agree with you on opinion side. I'm okay to side with you on minority opinion. I'm not very comfortable that we are using this to block a consensus.
I don't know what to say. I read it carefully, and the arguments to not give this person credit simply, I think they're wrong. I absolutely think they're wrong, and I think they set a very bad precedent. That
I agree with you on that. Yeah, I totally agree with you on the fact that I disagree with not giving this person credit and then we pretty much claiming a right of editor to deny adding new authors, which I don't think is a good idea to begin with, but also think it's very important
I'm
that we
sorry to jump in here, but this call for input was open for 30 days, and I'm using my keeper of consensus powers here. We are not reopening this discussion unless we have new arguments that weren't listed on the call for input.
I agree with that, Sam. I would go with that consensus.
And so this is now a policy going forward that we will not correct authorship.
And can we say this is not a policy?
No,
just
I don't.
that how we.
As far as I know, we aren't like precedent based. We can decide whatever we want at the time. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess I interpret the consensus being without setting a precedent at this time, we're not adding it unless seeing new argument.
And what has been the reaction of the primary author and the person who should be added, but especially.
As far as I know, they haven't said anything since opening the pull request.
Okay. As usual, I'm not a lawyer. None of us are. And CCO might complicate things. But I believe there's substantial legal precedent about, failing to give credit to an author. So I don't think there will be any lawsuit in this case. But I think we're doing a bad thing in not allowing a primary author to give credit. And I'm sorry that I did not notice. I didn't notice. I think I was in the discussion early on, and then time went by before I noticed that the discussion had closed off. But so I apologize for that. And, I sit on the edge of whether I should remain an editor. Um, I'm basically way behind in difficult work on an $18 million startup. So I can only give occasional attention to what's happening here. I try and keep an eye on things that are very important to me.
Of course, yeah, and we don't want to unfairly disadvantage you because of the amount of time you can commit, right? Um, I'm hoping that our 30-day windows are sufficient. Maybe we need to make them longer. I'm not sure.
Yeah, or I need to figure out some way to narrow my notification stream. Um,
I can like email you, like, well, whatever makes it easiest for you to follow along. I can definitely figure that out.
Yeah, I need to look at the titles to see if there's something discriminating. Currently my filter pulls in so many notifications. They stack up in the folder to where I have, I think, something like 5,000 unread emails of notifications of Ethereum related stuff. So yeah, if you're willing to keep an eye on things and notify me before they go to final.
Yeah, just let me know how. We can discuss that on Discord or whatever. I don't want to take up too much of everybody's time.
Mostly I try to notice when EIP meetings are, when these meetings are coming up, and check the agenda and be sure to participate. I don't know on this one, but I'd really appreciate if anything that requires consensus does come up at this meeting rather than the consensus happening on the discussion thread. Because it's hard even to tell on a discussion thread whether a consensus was reached or the discussion just sort of trailed off. So I don't know.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, for that, we have call for input included in EIPIP meeting every other week whenever we have this meeting. So I think that would be a good place to follow up with the points where consensus are required.
And I do not know in this case whether it came up at a meeting that I just missed. And I don't. Does the agenda go out as some sort of separate email or something? Unfortunately,
So
just
currently I publish them on Discord and the GitHub. If there's some other way you'd like me to send them, I can certainly do that as well.
Unfortunately, Discord's mailbox feature is useless. It keeps track of the last 2 weeks of messages. And so if I'm away or even just traveling for more than 2 weeks, I'll come back and here, the last 2 weeks, what happened before that? Well, we erased it. Too bad. And just, I don't know if Discord even has a good way to say, please email me anything that would have gone in that box. So yeah, that would help. I try to attend all these meetings unless there's a conflict. But I think the only way to actually check the agenda is to look the day before. And that's it's hard to. I may have already scheduled a conflict by then. So, and I don't know if we can reopen this, but I really feel strongly that we are doing a big disservice to these people, and I doubt they would go to court. But I think doing things this way actually opens us up to legal liability. And it's hard to tell because copyright law varies internationally. So the exposure is international. And just, somebody said something about it's not for fluffing resumes and it isn't really credit. And that's, I guess, just a wrong argument. Trying to decide things based on something that might have hypothetically with low probability happen in the future is silly. And it's not just about fluffing resumes, it's about giving credit where credit is due. And that's just a long established principle in copyright and authorship. Yeah.
So Gajinder mentioned in chat that copyright has been given up through CC0.
Right, but only the copyright holders can give that up. So if someone is there with both that person and the primary author, basically you open up a different kind of liability where a person can say, wait a minute, I was an author and I did not release my rights.
Yeah, that can happen regardless of whether they're in the list or not, right? Like that's, yeah. And like I could
think
add
for
you.
yeah, please go ahead, Sam.
Oh, and there's no like restrictions on who can add authors. Like I can add you to an author and pretend that you released it via CC0. So that like we can't use that list as any kind of like legally binding set of contributors.
I think we should perhaps consider this as an, I mean, even if we don't want to quote it as a precedence that we have made this decision, this could be an opportunity for new authors to make sure that whenever they are moving any proposal to a final status, please be sure that there would not be any further edits. It's not just about authors, it's about any other thing. Authors are definitely important. Their contributions are immense towards a standard, but this can be an example that be double, triple, and no matter how many times you need to be very sure that this is it, this is going into final. Please check it out.
Okay. I mean, I don't feel strongly enough to block it, but I would very much like to reopen the discussion on this. I simply believe we made a wrong decision, in my opinion. And if we have no way to go back and say we made a wrong decision, then we're going to correct ourselves. It makes no sense to me.
I think we can let it rest over here because this was already closed. So as Sam mentioned, if we come up with some new references, new example, we can perhaps open it, or if there are any other new cases about this, maybe we can reopen the discussion.
I'd like someone to reach out to the author to see if they're as unhappy as I am, or if they're willing to just shrug and say, well, the process was done and I'll accept the result. It's simply
I hope the author follows the EIPIP meeting and may be able to reach out to us or may be able to comment on the PR that was open to add some new references for our consideration.
Okay. Well, I will register my extreme unhappiness with the situation. We are doing a disservice to the authors. We're just being unnecessarily rigid, and that's a regular complaint about us and our process, that we're just rigid and bureaucratic and impossible to deal with that way.
Right.
Maybe
I mean, this is decentralized. Yeah.
Maybe even a further wilder idea would be to not render authors slash maintainers on final EIPs anyway. I mean, one can render them on, or maybe not even on the other EIPs, because it's about who can push and who can edit, and we can just totally remove this tab when we render it on the website.
Only the authors can even release rights under a CCO. So if you leave any on, so one has to credit the authors at some point, even for that CCO to be meaningful. And so it may not happen, but whenever we do this, we set up a situation where an author, an actual author, this person actually is an author, can come back and say, I did not release my rights.
Yeah, I'm with Pooja on this one. Let's end discussion on this topic, and we can continue it asynchronously. So next up, we have the working group charter. So I posted a link at the top of the chat, and I will repost it now. So this is kind of my work in progress draft on what I am going to be showing to editors later to vote on, or to rough consensus on, whatever the term we want to use. And this is describing how working groups are going to work, their general responsibilities, kind of the shape of all of that. I just wanted to bring it up here in case anybody has any early feedback, but it is not done yet. That's it for that topic. I'll turn it over to Pooja, and you can continue the call.
So the next one here is about an open PR. I believe we made a decision to merge this one in the earlier meeting, but it seems to be open. And the author is wondering if there is anything to be done from their side. Can someone maybe take a quick look and see where we are on it? The PR number is ERC 213.
Yeah, I think this is fine. It's adding comments, so I'll just go ahead and merge this unless somebody objects. This is a final ERC, and it's adding @return annotations to some functions.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean,
going
it
once.
was approved. Yeah, it was approved
Yeah.
in the
Oh,
last
okay.
meeting as well, but
Perfect.
very well. The next here are a couple of call for inputs, which have crossed the deadline. Sam, if you would like to maybe share
Sure.
more about it, and if there are any decisions.
Definitely. So we have 306 and 308. So 306 is for back references from a later EIP to an earlier one. So this would look something like ERC 223 would have a header in it that supersedes, and it would have the value of 20. So it would be like supersedes : 20, and that would be in ERC 223. And then on the ERC 20 page, we would have a list of all of the things that are claiming to supersede ERC 20. So this would like improve navigation between proposals that claim to replace one another. That's kind of the 30-second summary of this. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess we'll just do a quick temperature gauge here. How do we feel about these back references? I know, Gajinder, you said you are not in favor.
Yeah, I mean, as long as the clutter can be managed, I'm fine with it. I mean, if there is so many back references that can clutter it.
All right. And Greg, do you have any opinion on this right now, or do you want a bit more time to look at it?
I'm not sure if I completely understand. I'm sorry. I'm on a phone here, so it's hard.
Oh,
it's
no,
hard,
no worries.
hard to
Yeah,
check
no,
things. And
So
are we generally not wanting to supersede, or are we generally wanting to have supersede?
I think that's what we're trying to figure out right now. I'm in favor of it, and yeah.
I think for what's on the main net, there's only errata. It's already on the main net. And if there's an upgrade, then it's just sort of automatic. That it's just sort of automatic that an EIP, a core EIP, needs to describe what goes on the main net, and the appropriate thing, I guess, is a new EIP. The main purpose, I think, of having superseded is so that somebody who's trying to implement it doesn't go in and implement an older EIP that's no longer the way that we do things. A little less important for ERCs, but still important. I said in last week to write a small web server, and started in on using one EIP to do it, and then noticed that it had been superseded. And had I done it according to the first EIP, it would not necessarily work, because things had changed. So I can see a need for it, but I'm just not quite sure whether we want to do it that way or not.
All right, yeah,
Um,
I'll add those to the thread, and yeah, thank you.
if you could send me a link to the thread, I don't think chats tend to stick around after calls. I may be wrong, I just don't know where to find them.
Yeah, I'll send it on Discord.
Okay.
Perfect. With that, perhaps we can move on to the next one, or is there anything pending on call for input?
No, I think that's all of them. I don't think there's any new ones.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Very well. Moving on to the next one, that is continued or updates from the past meeting. It's about RIP process documentation, but I haven't heard back from RIP team. Seems like they are doing well with what they are doing right now. I have noticed an introduction of another RIP this month. But yeah, we might want to hear more from the team whenever they have an opportunity to share about it. Apart from that, in the last meeting, we discussed about web page rendering to include EIP, ERC, RIP. I know at this point of time, eips.ethereum.org include EIPS and ERCS, but they are not able to include the RIPS part. Sam also made some progress on working group on their website. I may have missed this. Sam, please help me remember that. Does that include RIPS as well?
So the working group proposal would include RIPs, yes.
No, I'm talking about the rendering of the website.
Yeah, so the version of the website that I'm working on for working groups would render RIPs.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't really touched anything without working groups yet.
Right. Yeah, no, because one of our contributors were working on eips.ethereum.org, and unfortunately, we have not seen much progress on sharing RIPS on the page as of now. If there are any change in future, we'll keep the group posted about it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Moving on, the next one is EIPS Insight for the month of February. As you can see, we have total of 8 draft, including 1 in RIP. Total of 6 ERCs and 1 new EIP have been added to the repository. We have 5 total proposals in review section. There are proposals in last call, but most of them are on foresight proposals, which would be moving towards final when they are finally deployed on the mainnet. But because those are on public testnet, they are in last call. And just for people to remember, this last call duration for core proposals are more than 14 days. It's not limited to 14 days. It would be whenever they are deployed on the mainnet, they will be merged as a final proposal. There is one proposal, which is EIP 2070, which was hard fork meta for Berlin, that has been withdrawn. And the inclusion of the information added to this proposal is included in a proposal shared by Tim Baiko to include all the missing. So that's all about EIPS Insight for this month. I'm quickly taking a look. Yeah. So for the next EIP editing office hour, the agenda for meeting 32 has already been added. It's just a request to all authors, irrespective of the type and category, whether you are an EIP author, ERC author, or RIP author. If you are looking for attention of editors for a PR that has been in the repository for quite some time and you could not grab an attention of editor, please add that as a comment to the agenda added over here. We will definitely try to include that in the next meeting, which is on coming Tuesday at 1600 UTC. So it would be on February 20th at 1600 UTC. And yeah, that's all about it. Any other thing anyone would like to quickly bring up, or may perhaps want to add it for the next meeting? I'll be happy to add it to the next agenda.
If I could back up a little bit on supersedes. Sam, I think, is the executable spec at this point considered canonical?
As canonical as anything is, you can link to it from EIPs if you want to.
The point being, if someone is setting out to write a client, then following the executable spec is the way to go, as opposed to trying to gather together all of the EIPs that happen to go into.
Yeah, it's certainly easier.
Okay. It's almost the only way.
The yellow paper has been updated as well.
Okay.
At least to the merge, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see that after the merge there was any commitment to keep that going, and even objections to keeping it going. A fair number of our developers don't have any mathematical skills, apparently, and nobody wants to spend money on simply doing an editor right to just clean up the presentation. But anyway, the supersede seems a bit less important on core EIPs because they're not where you go. They're not where you go to see what is the canonical thing to implement. If you go back to an older EIP that describes an older chain, it's sort of your bad.
Yeah, this would be more for things like there were 2 proposals for deprecating self-destruct. One was withdrawn and the other was finalized, or I think it's in last call. So you could have a supersedes from the one that's actually going on the network to the withdrawn one if you want. It's for like document status.
If it was withdrawn, there's really nothing to supersede.
Yeah, it would just be to get the link to, like, from the withdrawn one to the next one kind of thing.
And that's not available in GitHub.
Not right now, I don't think, no.
There's not even a report link.
I mean, as of now, supersede is not a legal status in EIP process, but if people really want to share the information of which EIP may have superseded, in case the earlier proposal have been withdrawn, we can perhaps add a sentence over there to let people know which is the next EIP they can follow.
Yeah, we have withdrawal reason for that.
I was about to see it. Yeah. The EIPs I've withdrawn, make note in the withdrawal that they're withdrawn in favor of a different proposal. Okay.
Cool. Anything else? Anyone? Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Hope to see you in 2 weeks. Have a good rest of the day, everyone.
Thanks for hosting.
Yes.
Talk to everybody later.
Bye.